My comfort zone book-wise is definitely the romance genre. It all started with Beach Read 1 June ago, and now I have a book channel. I know all the popular authors in the romance genre. I know every trope. I know that every single romance book is gonna have that third act conflict. And I love the romance genre, I always will. But after reading probably 75 romance books, I'm ready to look into some other genres. I'm gonna force myself to read some genres that I have never read before, or I have read a couple, but I'm not comfortable in any of these other spheres. I don't know the big names. And the goal of this is to gain a new comfort zone, gain some new territory in some different genres, and see if there's something out there that I just haven't discovered for myself yet. The genre I think I could get most acquainted with is a thriller mystery genre. And this book, The Guest List, was so popular that even though I didn't even read anything from this genre, I knew about it. It won a Goodreads Choice Award and it was part of the Reese's Book Club, so I figured this would be a quality first pick. Hey guys! I just got back from the airport and took a shower and I'm in my PJs because I got 4 hours of sleep last night. So I'm gonna cuddle up on the couch and finish The Guest List. I'm like, let's see how many pages. I'm on page 167 and I think there's only 300 pages, so I'm probably gonna finish it quite quickly. But I'm absolutely loving it so far. And I was thinking about it, I was like, how many other adult mystery thrillers have I read? And I think it's like 2. So I really have not read this genre very much at all. But I really like her writing and it's not scary, which is what I was most afraid of, was that it would spook me out. But it's not scary like that, so I'm gonna finish it up, I think. I really can't read these books for longer than like 3 days. I just want to know what's happening so bad. I finished the first book out of my comfort zone, which is a thriller mystery. It was just mysterious, it was dramatic, it was gossipy. All these wealthy people on this island in Ireland for a wedding. You have 5 different perspectives and all of them have a secret, and then a murder happens at the end. And you're kind of getting like a past and present timeline just a little bit. And it was so good. It was super fast paced for me, and I ended up immediately afterwards being like, ooh, 5 stars. And then I looked at all the reviews, and it's funny because I feel like this happens a lot. Like if you only read a certain genre and then you read something outside of it, you're just like, oh my gosh, wow, that was the best one ever. But I think the reviews are mostly coming from people who read a ton of thrillers, so they actually can predict what's gonna happen, whereas I can't predict anything that's gonna happen because it's like I'm reading the trope for the very first time. So realistically, I'd probably give it like a 4.5 stars. I actually really enjoyed her writing style, and it's so exciting to pick up a book where you wanna know what happens at the end, because I feel like with the romance genre, I just knew the plot structure so well that it was just getting too repetitive and boring, which I'm sure happens in this genre as well if you read a ton of it. But this was a great first book to read because I feel like this is the genre that I could most closely become familiar with or comfortable with. The next genre that I think is still out of my comfort zone because I don't really know like all the big titles and authors in this genre, and I haven't read a lot of it, but I feel like I could get familiar and I could fall in love with it, is YA fantasy. So for this one, I'm gonna read These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan because it was recommended to me as ACOTAR, which is A Court of Thorns and Roses. If you don't know, it's like the most popular fantasy series ever, but with none of the spice. So it's kind of thick. I'm about 17 pages in. I think the thing about the fantasy genre that is so different is the world building that takes place, because you might see some words that you've never seen before because they are quite literally made up, and that can be frustrating sometimes because the payoff comes a bit later. You're not just, you know, opening a romance book set in the real world. You're having to learn a whole new world before you can actually enjoy it. But it's also kind of similar because we also have romance subplots, and in this one in particular, there's a love triangle. Okay, so other than this book, the only fantasy I've ever read that involved fairies was the Cruel Prince trilogy. So similarities I'm seeing are that the fairies are evil and mean to the humans, and then there's a Seelie court, which is interesting because when you read it for the first time, you think it's unique to that book. But now I'm understanding like that's just a theme in fairy books, I guess. But obviously each world has different rules and stuff, so it's gonna be interesting to see. But I think I do like reading about weird creatures like fairies and humans and goblins and all this weird crap, and like the magic. It's really fun. I like it a lot. I finished These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan this morning. This is like a 440 page book, and I finished it in 2 days. So it was fast paced for me. I was very hooked. I would say I was more hooked and excited for the first like 220 pages. And then I kind of hit a point where I was like, okay, yeah, this is good, but I'm not like obsessed like I was with The Cruel Prince. And towards the end, and when I was finishing it, I kind of got that feeling that I get from a lot of young adult fantasy books where I'm like, I get it, but I don't fully feel the feelings, if that makes sense. But to be fair, I also gave The Cruel Prince 3 stars, and it wasn't until I read the second and third book that I was absolutely obsessed. So like I've read Caraval, 3 stars, The Red Queen, 3 stars. Oh yeah, I read Six of Crows, and like it was a 4 stars because it's such a good book, but I wasn't really really that invested all that much. But the sequel to this comes out in July, and it's the last day of June today. So that's perfect. I'll definitely read the sequel because I feel like now that I have the characters and the world building, I have the potential to become obsessed, but I'm not obsessed yet. So that's kind of an interesting thing about this genre. We'll see if that continues to happen if I try to keep reading stuff in YA fantasy. But the next book that I'm gonna try to read, I am so excited for. Here it is. It's The Raven Boys, book 1 of the Raven Cycle. Okay guys, update for you. I don't know if I ever told you I was reading this, but I started reading The Raven Boys. This whole series has like a cult following. People love it. I was so excited about it, but I actually didn't know it was classified as paranormal YA until I actually already bought it and started reading it. But yeah, I got about 187 pages in, like almost 200 pages, pretty far into the book, and I see all the potential. I see that the characters are people you could fall in love with. It is written in like a third person omniscient, which is not my favorite. I really prefer first person, but I am going to DNF this, which means did not finish. Grammatically doesn't make sense. I'm going to put this book down and not read it simply because I am spooked. I'm an easily spooked girl, okay? And I like to read before bed, and I can't. And no one ever really properly told me the premise of this book, so I'm gonna try to tell you. But obviously, knowing it's paranormal now, I should have known I wouldn't like it. But basically, we have this girl named Blue who is in this family of like psychics, I guess. And then we have these 3 or 4 main guy characters who are all rich and go to this private school. Well, not all of them are rich, but they go to this very rich private school. And this guy has become obsessed with finding this dead king who he believes is not dead, and that if he could find the energy waves of like, it's all made up, so it's hard to describe, but they're called like ley lines. And if he could track down the source of these energy ley lines, he could find the ghosts of people and eventually find this dead king. Yeah, that's basically as much as I got from it, but I just don't really like the whole searching for ghosts vibe, so this was just too out of my comfort zone. Had I known it was classified as paranormal, I probably wouldn't have picked it up, but I just didn't really think it was like that, you know? But I see all the potential of why people love this. I could totally see myself being obsessed with the characters, but if it was just like a different subject matter, then I probably would really like this because the writing was pretty good. Looks like we're gonna have to go try another book in a different genre and see what happens. I can't let you go, baby. I just wanna tell you that. The next book I'm going to be picking up is Someone Who Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory by Raphael Bob Waksberg. He is the creator of BoJack Horseman. That's a show I've never watched before, but this is a collection of short stories, which I've never, actually I did read that one time for the reading books like Robert Pattinson, but other than that, I've never, out of my free will, picked up a short story collection. And these are all stories about love, and they're kind of written in his very strange, dark humor, what is this a metaphor for type writing. So I'm actually already like 84 pages in. I'm on the 8th short story. So far, it is weirder than I thought it would be. I'm having a hard time understanding what certain things are a metaphor for, or if they're even supposed to be. Let me just read you what the first short story is about so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. A young engaged couple forced to deal with interfering relatives dictating the appropriate number of ritual goat sacrifices for their wedding. That was the first one, and I think that was a metaphor for how silly and stupid all of our traditions are when it comes to like weddings or couple, I don't know. Just stuff like that where it's like, oh, what size wedding or what ring will you buy or blah, blah. That's what I think he was getting at, but I'm not sure. So I'm kind of in a reading slump right now. And the other thing about short stories is even if you start to like one, it's so short that by the time you like get invested in the characters, you're starting over on a new story in the next chapter with a whole new set of characters. This has been kind of difficult to get through so far. All of my friends say, girl, you better take care, cause that man is trouble, you best beware. And though deep down I know I might be headed for teardrops, now that you got me started, I just can't stop. No, no. Okay, update. Made it to page 100. I finished the short story that I was stuck in and that I thought was boring, but then today I picked it up and I thought it was hilarious, actually. Probably one of the funniest in the book. So I guess yesterday it was just tiring to learn a bunch of characters and then have to jump into a whole new story, but on a new day, it was fun. So I feel like you have to pick up a short story collection and then read them all separately. Like, it's not the type of book you can just sit here and read the whole thing. That story was called These Are Facts. So I thought that one was really funny. The next one is 6 pages long, so I guess I'm gonna read that. Lunch with the person who dumped you. Just to show you more of an example, this short story had a bunch of examples of lunches that happen with your ex. The loaded weapon lunch, the reconciliation lunch, the for old time's sake lunch, and the here's your stuff back lunch. Don't mind a little video game in the background. I just read, or I tried to read a short story that was from a dog's perspective. Then I realized I'm allowed to skip the short story if I don't like it, because there's just so many stories you can kind of just be like, oh, I don't need to read this one. Because I have laughed out loud, and I feel like this would be fun to have as a palate cleanser in between fiction books, but I'm really craving being in a fiction book right now. So I'm trying to think of what we could read in between all of these, because I'm only like halfway done. I originally found this book on Instagram, and I went back to look at the reviews and was just kind of shocked at how much love people had for this book. I really forgot. It's interesting when you just are not experiencing the same thing and you wish you were. But I decided to not let myself fester in this reading slump. So I decided to actually just follow my gut and keep going down the thriller mystery path and pick up another one to see if this is truly something that I could get into. So I picked up another nominee for the Goodreads Choice Award. It didn't win, but it looked so interesting. It was called Every Last Secret by A.R. Torr, and it was the perfect thing to pick up. I wanted to update you guys more, but I'm just flying through this book. I started it yesterday and now I'm on page 239. I think there's less than 300 pages in this book, but this is the type of book that you just want to set aside all of your responsibilities to finish because it's so good. And I'm getting close to the end, so I just have to finish it, but oh my gosh. I don't remember the last time I went through a book this fast. It's so good. Here's the update. I made it to page 132. I'm gonna keep trekking along through these short stories, but I'm just gonna read them when I'm in the mood to change up the pace of whatever I'm reading, because reading this straight through like a book is not possible. But I do have a very, very, very large update, and that is, obviously the goal of this video was to hopefully fall in love with one of the genres that I read and become obsessed with it, because then I would have a whole new world of books to read and to get obsessed with. And after reading the guest list by Lucy Foley, that is exactly what happened. Specifically the niche where rich people have secrets and try to kill each other. So ever since then, I read The Hunting Wives. I'm reading My Summer Darlings by the same author, and I flew through Every Last Secret by A.R. Torr. This one was so good. I gave this 5 stars, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. I might even just round it up to 5 because it was so fun. So this is crazy. I don't know if I'm just rating them high because I don't know anything about this genre, and I actually bought a bunch of other books. So now you're gonna see me in my thriller reading era, and I'm so glad that something stuck from this video, because my second favorite probably was These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. I could get more into the fantasy genre, although it was interesting because with this book, I could kind of already tell that I was getting kind of sick of some of the tropes. And then we had some complete misses, like paranormal YA, because I did not know it was gonna be paranormal. This was kind of a level 1 comfort zone. Level 2 out of my comfort zone would be sci-fi, memoirs, historical fiction. That's really out of my comfort zone. Maybe I'll do this again, but until next time, I will see you on Instagram, TikTok, or my bookshop. Love you, bye!